Okay, then let's keep going with the next part of today's course. And now we really get into the nitty-gritty, namely the nitty-gritty of your, hopefully, thesis or project. And we really want to look at how to prepare your thesis. Like, first question, of course, that you should ask yourself, and I will ask you now, is what do you think actually makes a successful bachelor or master thesis? If you need to put it into like one sentence, what do you think is the criteria that makes or breaks a good thesis?
Does make a contribution to the scientific
Very good. What? Nice. Somebody listened. Yeah. Identifies and addresses a research gap. Exactly. Makes a contribution to the field, to the research that is out there. And because it makes a contribution, it automatically, more or less, is interesting to the researchers in the field. Yes. What is the prerequisite to make such a contribution?
Find a gap.
Find a gap, exactly. Ask, yes, that we saw, ask the right question. Yeah, so you need a good research question, something you want to know, something that is unknown. Yeah, so in order to make a good contribution, something needs to be unknown, and you should figure out and ask the right question or make the right research objective that you answer, ideally answer in your thesis. Who already has a specific thesis topic? Who knows what the thesis will be about? Yeah, you, okay. Yeah. Okay. Who has at least an idea what it could be? Or is some of you don't have any idea? Yeah? Because I would like to practice this with you actually, to find a good research question. Of course, this sort of requires that you have an idea, what your thesis could be in which field, and what might be a question that you ask there. If it's vague, okay, I would still try to do this little exercise with you. So, because many students particularly have a trouble of finding a really good question. And I brought this little exercise here. It won't take long, maybe 5-10 minutes, maybe just distribute it. That one per person. That should help you identify a good research question. And of course, it's even more relevant and easier to do if you already have a specific topic. But if not, then I would just recommend to you that you assume, a field that you have certain knowledge in. I want to write my thesis. What could be an interesting question? Yeah, I won't. If you cannot, then okay. But if you can, let's just take 5-10 minutes and then present some to see, where we are at. This is not supposed to be the end of it. I just wanted to raise your awareness to the fact that this is really a very, very crucial part. These two parts are very, very crucial for your thesis, and they should be really visibly, easily recognizable in your thesis. Yeah, don't bury it. Don't bury it somewhere in the introduction saying, this is what I'm doing. No. Make a subsection, make it really, this is my research question. Very often you see it, probably you can confirm, you see it even printed in bold. This is my research question. This is what it's all about here. Yeah? And in order to answer these research questions, I pose myself the following research tasks, for example. As I said, for a bachelor thesis, this can be 1 or 2 at most, research tasks, and a very narrow question. And the further you go, the question would be broader and the tasks would be more. And your thesis, in the end, is really just there with all its structure and so on to answer this question and fulfill this objective. Yeah? The research question and the research tasks sort of predefine the structure that your thesis will have, because your thesis should address these tasks. Yeah? And everything in your thesis, the methodology and so on, should be geared towards these questions and these tasks that you put up in the beginning. And so tips on coming up with these very crucial components. Of course, invest some more time than we did right now. Yeah, it was just an exercise. Really take your time, think thoroughly about it. There's also, if you're unsure whether it's actually a good question, a good problem. Yeah? So maybe also for you, when you say the task was given to me, take a look at this resource that I'm providing you in StudIP, how to choose a good scientific problem. I'm sure there's a good question in your problem. Yeah, I know, but just saying, you know. And yeah, you already got this to develop the final question, the final objective. Why is it so important? Well, as I said, it sort of paves the way for everything that comes after, and structure is really essential to a good thesis. A thesis must make sense in the sense that you can clearly see, okay, so this was the start, this question, this objective, and then everything that comes after, I can sort of mentally align and see, okay, this helps me to answer this goes here. Yeah, so it just falls together and makes sense. And this we already did. In order to, and this is really a planning stage still, yeah? So it's not about writing. This you should plan beforehand. Develop your question, develop your objective, and develop sort of the main components, the main structural components of your thesis. If you write your thesis, and sometimes even your project or seminar project, in our group, we actually demand that. We demand a research proposal. What will be your project like? So we want that you are clear about the essential steps, the methodology that you want to follow, the problem itself, and so on. And this is also what something I want to at least take some first notes, some draft with you here today, yeah, to answer the really essential questions for your thesis, for your lab rotation project, whatever, in a plan. And this is beforehand, before you sit down and do the experiments, before you write anything, is really make a plan, a research proposal that answers what is the problem, why is it a problem, why is it an interesting, relevant problem, how do I plan to address this problem, how do I, will I try to figure it out, to prove it or whatever, and what do I think when I'm successful, should I be, of course this is research, I might fail, but if I'm successful, what would be the expected results and contributions be? Yeah? Rule of thumb should be 3 pages. If you can make it less, even better. It's actually a good sign if you can be very concise. Still, everything needs to be in, but if you can be concise, it's actually a sign that you planned very well, that you're just very clear about your problem and what you want to do. So there is a template for this. Please try to open it. It's Oggi. I just used this link shortener, scientific writing SW minus RESPROP minus template. So research proposal RESPROP minus template. It's not in StudIP yet, I guess, no? Probably not. Now, try to use this link, please. Don't think it's in StudIP.
Is this also used when researchers apply for funding, something like this?
All the components are in there. Yes, it doesn't look exactly like this, but yeah, of course, the components is exactly what also a funding agency wants to know. Yeah. It's basically the recipe to research. Yeah, it's always the same. Research is about finding something out, making a contribution, and the steps of getting there is asking the right question, deriving the right objectives, and then just planning the right methodology, experiments, and so on. And yeah. Knowing what the state of the art is, of course. Everybody has this template? Yeah? Okay. There's a template and there is an example. So the template should be not filled, but you probably have the example right now, yeah? Mm-hmm. Or did I mix up the links here? That might be that I put in the wrong link to the link shortener. I don't know. What is opened when you type in this link? Okay, good. Yeah, there's also an example as an inspiration. Oh, okay. Interesting. Try to do it. Of course, probably you can't finish it, but focus on, well, the question. That's why we did it. If you can, as good as you can put it already, a research objective, maybe methodology if you already have an idea. So try on focusing really, what is the problem? Research objective, that's why we also did this previous exercise. And then if you already have an idea how to approach it, take some notes, just let's say 10 minutes, and then we listen to some. Okay? Okay. I'm not going to cover this in detail right now. You are familiar, of course, your thesis also follows the structure that we mentioned for research papers, basically. But if you are unsure, and for certain subsections, I can understand that. What goes where? We actually provide you with a couple of resources that make that very clear, starting from this, let's say, overview to a more elaborate overview, so from 1 page to 2 pages. And if you're still not clear, then we have in the resources later on in StudIP an annotated example of a real paper that tells you, okay, of course you see the sections and why did we put this and that piece of information into that section. So you can be really clear, where to put certain components of my research. Yeah? We talked about, of course, the results, go into the evaluations, let's say, and all the results tables and graphs and so on. Method really explains, hey, what were my settings, my parameters, for example, also when it comes to model training and so on. Please put your hyperparameters and so on. So really describe it well so that it can be reproduced. Maybe some of you have seen some papers that don't do that, and you sit there and maybe your supervisor asks, hey, reproduce the results. Oh, nice. Doesn't work. And so on. Yeah? So this you can check out later when we uploaded it in StudIP. Now, we already talked about every thesis, at least most lab rotation projects, other projects require some sort of looking what is the state of the art. Yeah? Please don't just say, okay, nobody has done it. And I've seen, I'm not saying this because of you, I've seen PhD defenses, yeah, where the candidate stood in front in his defense and said, yeah, this hasn't been done before. And the reviewer did Google, but here, it has been done before. Oh, did you do literature? No. Okay, yeah. What do you say in this moment? I mean, this is the worst case. Yeah, you spend years of work on it and just hadn't done a proper literature search. It's not possible. You shouldn't do that, but it happens. Yeah. So please, to a reasonable degree, do a literature search to get a grasp of the state of the art. How do you do that? Well, actually, so that you don't just hear me talking today, I have my colleague Cornelius, with which I wrote this extensive literature review that had the wrong page numbers, early on. And he will explain, in general, a little bit about literature surveys and also options to do them. So let's see that we can actually hear them. What you, of course, shouldn't do, but what you see, what very many students particularly, but also some unexperienced researchers understand under a related work section is, oh yeah, paper X did Y, paper Y did Z, and so on. Yeah? So this is not what I would call a state-of-the-art overview, because this just shows, okay, I read a lot, but it doesn't necessarily show I understood, like the bigger themes, the contexts and so on of these papers. This is not a good literature review. It's a literature review, okay, but not one that you should aim for. So don't just enumerate methods and papers and so on, but try to, find their underlying structure, classify them, put them into relation to each other, which problems they address, which problems are still open, and so on. Highlight which papers are more relevant, more significant than others, and why. Yeah, certain pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages of certain methods, and so on. So this is a good literature review, and Cornelius will actually tell us a little bit about how to get there. So,
hello everyone. Now it's my turn to give you some insights into literature reviews. And I want to start with the different types of literature surveys. And this should help you to pick an appropriate one for your thesis. And this partly has to do with your research question, but also you want to pick one that fits the time scope for your thesis. So, for example, if you picked a research question that covers a broad field of research, where a lot of research already has been done and there's an extensive amount of papers, you might want to pick a method that only reflects on some of those papers of high quality that are representative of the field or subfield of the research and are enough to answer the research question without going through all the papers. So this example that I was just giving to you would be a scoping review. So you pick some papers that are representative, but you miss out on a lot of them that you find of low quality or that you find are not that important for the research field. But if you want to do the gold standard, you say, okay, for this thesis, I want to go through all the important research. I want to give a comprehensive overview. And then you would go for a systematic review where you comprehensively go through all the research provided in this field. And then you have a really, really profound result that can't be challenged that easily, and people will be more accepting of your results. And I also put some criteria that you want to aim for. So if you go for reproducibility, which the systematic review certainly has, it allows researchers that pick up on your research or try to reproduce your data to apply the same methodology of your search with the same search engine, the same criteria, and they will obtain the identical results in the end. This makes it highly reproducible and so valuable for the research, because if your research is not reproducible, it makes it hard to prove that your results are correct. And this comes like method-wise, it comes with the aspects of being transparent, so laying open your methodology. It comes with the attribute of being strict, sticking to that methodology and not taking shortcuts. But it also comes with the defined methodology, so you define it at the beginning of your thesis, you lay it open to the reader, and then you apply this methodology throughout your systematic review over all the research that you can find for your research topic. And I already mentioned the scoping review. This one has not the goal to pick up on all the research, but it's enough for the scoping review to give you representative papers of good quality of each research field. Then I also highlighted the rapid review red because I included this as a negative example. Whenever you lack to sort your review into one of the others, it might be that you're doing a rapid review with no methodology, no reproducibility, and none of the good aspects. So you might be looking at a rapid review. Please don't do it because you want researchers to prove your work and to reproduce your work. Then we have the critical review, which is focusing on the gaps and limitations of a certain research field. And this is one that I like a lot and I would recommend as well for your thesis because it has some limitations. It doesn't cover a whole field, but its goal is to identify the gaps and limitations, and it's good at doing that. And with these gaps and limitations found, other researchers can pick up on it again, and also you yourself can pick up on it. So you might be doing a critical review on a certain topic, you identify a gap, and in your later academic work, you will pick up on that gap and fill that gap, which creates room for a bachelor thesis followed by a master's thesis, or a master's thesis followed by a PhD, which makes it, I think, valuable. Then we have the umbrella review at the end. The umbrella review, similar to the systematic review, tries to comprehensively cover an area, but uses a different approach by not going through all the papers in the field, but only going through already existing systematic reviews. So if you have a field that is very popular, like AI at the moment, and people already are writing systematic reviews, you can consume only those systematic reviews and combine them to generate and produce a finding that holds true over all those existing reviews. And this is called an umbrella review. But you, again, try to be transparent, strict, and defined with your methodology to giving it just as high of a standard that the systematic reviews you consumed already have. The meta-analysis, similarly to the umbrella review, consumes other research, but with the goal for statistical analysis. So if you are looking at a field where a lot of statistical analysis has been done, you're getting a lot of numbers. These numbers are dependent on sample size. So if you have a small sample size in one paper, there might be a little margin for error, because greater sample size, you get less errors. And this meta-analysis just mimics a greater sample size by including other research in the same field or the same topic, and therefore inflating the sample size and making this meta-analysis stronger than all the little research papers in this field. So it's a combination of the other papers. And in the beginning, I also jumped over the narrative review. The narrative review summarizes, similar to the rapid review, but it is not with the goal of being fast and giving a fast glimpse, but it tries to summarize the literature on the entire topic, but it has not given this systematic nature of being transparent, strict, and defined, which makes it a candidate that you could use. But in the end, I would always recommend to open your method up to the reader, tell him which search engines you used, which criteria for inclusion and exclusion you used, how you screened the data, how you assess the quality of these read papers. And this makes it automatically a stronger version than just a narrative review or just a rapid review. So aim for scoping or critical reviews and you should be fine. And of course, if your research field is really narrow and there's not that many papers published on it, try considering doing a systematic review, even if you only have a few months to do so. So next, what can I do to find the right search term? Because if I want to start analyzing and reviewing literature, I need literature, and using popular search engines like Norman probably already introduced can help you finding research. And before you use these search engines, it's a good idea to brainstorm. What am I looking for? What fits my research question? And then just put a naive, simple search term into it and just get some first results. In the second step, read up on those results, check after the abstract section of each paper, there will be a keyword section. So if you run into papers that fit your topic really great, and you see, hey, the keywords of them, I haven't used them in my brainstorming so far, and I can introduce them in your search term, do that. And also, these keywords might have synonyms. So in the third step, when you collected all the keywords from the research that is highly relevant for your field, try to find synonyms for them that even makes your search term more stronger. And then you end up with a search term that covers a lot of the research and most likely covers all the research you need, but also research that you don't need. And at this step, the filtering comes in. Some search engines, and I recommend, of course, using search engines that do provide these operators, offer the Boolean operators. So you can include or exclude certain other terms that would deviate away from your research question. And in my experience, when I did a literature review on incentive mechanisms, you always get on these social sciences or incentive with the psychiatric aspects and not in a computer science manner. So you can identify the keywords that would deviate away from the research question and put them in with a not statement into your search, excluding all the searches that would not fit your results anyway. And by this, you end up with a more manageable amount. In the end, it can still be a lot, but it's a good tool to filter. Yeah, what do you do when you end up with a lot of papers or even so much papers that you can't go over it? Then you might either change the research questions to be even more narrow, or the better approach, pick a method. You remember the last slide, where you don't have to go through all the work, but you find a method that allows you to identify maybe the 10 most valuable or most impactful paper of one field and go through these papers, because for your thesis, the outcome will be likely enough to reason your research question and your results, even without the extensive knowledge of all the papers in the field. Great. So you have your search term and you obtained your papers. What to do next? Yeah, you synthesize the literature. You organize the retrieved articles, and you can do this either by using mind mapping tools. And then if you see, okay, there's a subtopic, maybe I put them at the right of my screen, related to one buzz term or buzzword. And this way you already find these clusters of similar topics, which later on allows you to structure them in your chapters, maybe give one chapter for one cluster of types, but also allows you to find categories for these fields. But also Excel sheets to work, or like criteria checklist. I will give you a glimpse later on what these could look like. For your methodology, simple question, which articles used a similar method? So if there's like a method you want to look into and 10 papers use the same one, cluster them together, introduce them in the same chapter, discuss them with the other one in mind, find advantages of one approach over the other. This would be the methodology. For the topic, which articles focused on a similar topic or use case, so you can also simply cluster by topic. If you have, in my case, incentive mechanisms for mobile networks, then you would have mobile network as a use case, and you will discuss all the papers that build up some mobile network under this topic. So find topics that just allow you to create groups of papers that otherwise would be like just a meaningless list. So again, you don't want to offer the reader just a list of papers, you want to introduce some structure. This is why we are doing this. Then chronology is also a valid structure, going into papers that were published maybe at the beginning of the 2000s, and then later on going through more recent work that is like maybe the last year. This way you can also create groups. Not that meaningful as methodology or topics, but it can be interesting in some certain topics or research fields. Then, categories, how to find the fitting categories. We have already introduced, like you can group by method, topic, or chronology, but you can also find your own categories by analyzing other work. So if there's a meta review, like a review that already covered the field, or maybe covered other reviews in that field, you can steal, you can get inspired by their categories. And if you find, okay, I have applied the categories from paper X to my research, and now I'm having this group of papers that I can't really introduce into other categories because this field recently has changed. There was like a new technology introduced, and these papers don't fit anymore. So what do I do with them? Maybe it's the reason to introduce a new category that is not already in the other research. And if you have good arguments to doing so, that will be really valuable for the researchers to have this new category, to identify, hey, all the new work that was usually a gap in the research has now been filled, and we have a category for that. And the first time you go through all the retrieved papers, don't read all the papers entirely. Usually it's enough to go through the abstract and conclusion to understand what the paper is about. If you do not understand, you can afterwards jump into certain chapters and fill the gaps of what you didn't understand. But in the first read through, it mostly doesn't make sense to read through all the papers because it's just a big amount of papers that will be filtered out anyway because of you already have enough for the subfield. So if you already have 10 papers and your research provided maybe 100, then you only will stick to the 10 ones, and you can still read the abstract of the others to have knowledge of what has been done there. But by reading the abstract, you will find inclusion and exclusion criteria that you later on apply that dismisses these papers. So don't read through all the papers before you define the exclusion and inclusion criteria entirely. And the chance is that you can't do it in the beginning, and the criteria will also be an iterative process. So by the more abstracts and more conclusions you read, you will be able to provide even more precise inclusion and exclusion criteria, filtering out more papers, and in the end, you end up reading only a portion of all the papers you found. So we already have defined which papers we want to analyze and we want to present and discuss in the paper. So we want to do that. For that, we have to read the entire articles that are left to do it. And we summarize briefly. So whenever we cite a paper, we introduce the reader to what this paper is about with a short paragraph, maybe what's unique about the work that we are analyzing here, then what has been done, of course, in this paragraph, but also what has been not done. So what are they missing? What did they avoid? Did they maybe introduce a practical idea or a theoretical idea? Did they test? Did they simulate? Did they roll out a prototype? So what has been done? What has been not done? Where are they missing something? It's good to provide here because it later on helps you to discuss if it is even a good idea that was presented in that work. Okay, without getting too much in this, what to discuss, I guess you get the gist of it. That's the point of finding advantages and disadvantages of each work and maybe formulate a recommendation afterwards. So, and of course you could write a review containing only paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, describing a lot of stuff in word form, but it's not very memorable. So whenever you have the opportunity to visualize some findings or maybe provide a table that provides distinguishing characteristics with a single view, do it. Try to provide some visual aspects in your review. It makes it more interesting to read, but also more memorable and maybe more citable, because if you want to cite, it's mostly easier to even cite something that you haven't read before. So tips and best practices. We know how to find the research, we know how to present it, how to discuss it, but is it enough to succeed? Yeah, it can be enough, but some tips might help you anyway to increase the chances. So first and most important one is use referencing software. For me, it's Zotero is the choice, but you could use whatever you need or whatever you prefer. It's just like, if you don't, you will get lost. A review always contains a lot of citations and a lot of work, and you need some tool to organize it. And you don't want to create bibliographies by hand. You want a tool that assists you with that, because maybe the citation style gets changed in the end, and then it's only like a flick of a button to change the citation style. And if you have done it by hand, it will be really cumbersome and not worth doing. So please spend the time at the beginning of your research, get into the referencing software. Then set realistic goals and milestones. Break the review into small manageable tasks. I think this holds true for every project you do. And what do you gain by doing that? You get small, frequent achievements that keep you motivated. So instead of getting up in the morning and having like one huge task, you want to have tasks that partially are done maybe at 10 or at 12 at lunchtime, and then you get this motivating feeling of having achieved already something, and this helps you to stay motivated. If you have this huge task for one day, you likely will try to avoid it because it's so big and seems not manageable at all, and then you maybe lose time in the morning, start in the doing lunch because you get a bad feeling, a gut feeling, and you feel the urge to do it now, and then it's still a big task, and you get home late and you feel demotivated, and that's not what you want to do. So you want to structure your work and stay motivated, because you have to do it for multiple months, and staying motivated is important. Otherwise, you will maybe lose your mind. So make steady progress, cuts into the same idea. Reading for more papers per day will exhaust you. Try to do like 2 or 3 papers, depending on the size of the papers, of course. But if you want to do, or if you tell yourself, okay, at the beginning of the week I didn't manage to read some papers, I will just do 5 on Friday. And then you start reading on Friday and you see, okay, some papers have like 40 pages. and then you're screwed because you will only make it through one paper, and afterwards you are exhausted. So try to make steady progress, even if it's hard. Read one paper per day, read 2 papers per day, but don't try to plan for like 3 papers, 5 papers. It's too much. An example chart that shows progress by steadily increasing. So what I did in my master's thesis was to have this performance chart that showed me some kind of feedback how fast I make progress. So this can be either by the amount of papers read or by the written pages. And there's a tool in most charting tools that's called interpolation. So you can tell them, if I do 2 papers per day, I will be through with all the papers on date X. And it will show you a graph that steadily increases until date X and hopefully meets the target. And by doing that, you will immediately see that you don't meet the target, building up some pressure, giving you visual feedback that your performance is not good enough. And on the other hand, if you try to do more, that graph will shift so that you get vacation time with every day you do more. And this is highly motivating. So try that if you have problems motivating yourself. Don't mind the quality of your writing. In the beginning, it's always hard to start. You feel like, okay, it's not good enough. If I write this, nobody will read it. You have self-doubt. Just write. And even if it's using like Trump language with 400 different words, it's okay. For the beginning, it's all about making progress, and you can still polish it. If it's just reading like research X bad in like buzzwords and you didn't find the time to write a proper sentence, it's not that bad. It's just making progress, creating content first, and afterwards you always have the time to polish. But in the beginning, you get started, and after you've started, it's getting easier. Then request feedback from your advisor early. I think that's common knowledge. If you wait for the feedback and only do it finally, like in 1 week or 2 weeks before submitting, there will be little feedback from your advisor because you wouldn't have the time to read through all of the thesis in that time. So do it early and do it with maybe a chapter, and then the feedback will be more valuable and you still have time to incorporate it. Then take breaks when you need them. So need them meaning you already did something and then you take the break because you don't want to overwork yourself. Common mistake is feeling in the morning, oh, I'm exhausted. I first take a break until I'm not exhausted anymore and then I start. Yep, will not work. Work first, but then reward yourself with breaks and then you will be happily writing your thesis. And don't lie to yourself. Always a good hint, I think. Feedback from organizing articles. How can you do it? What you see on top is like one organization structure I did in an Excel form. The citation keys on the left, this time color-coded simulation tools, and also criteria on the right side with checkboxes. And what you don't see is that, or what you can see in a lower section, sometimes there are gaps with the criteria. And you can use these lists to filter already the ones that didn't make it to 3 ticks in my case. So in my case, I wanted incentive mechanisms discussed. I wanted computational resources discussed, and I wanted the approach to be decentralized. So if a paper didn't meet all the 3 ticks, I would just leave it out and kick it. And this way, you get a great overview and you can filter out effectively. And then you can color code results by already identifying categories. Yeah, and the lower example, similar, but you already see that there are a lot of more gaps in the criteria. This is just one without the filtering process applied. And yeah, do it, like find a tool that helps you organizing all the papers, because you won't be able to memorize all the aspects of each paper. So identifying the aspects, giving them a column into your table will help you to get the overview. And of course, mind mapping, this is more early stage of a literature review. And in this case, we wanted to find out what are the characteristics, what are the categories that certain incentive mechanisms fall into. And so we used a mind mapping tool, and even only by clustering them in different locations, we already got a good overview what the fields later on will be. So I liked it, and I would recommend using it if you have trouble finding the right categories. I see that was it for me, and I hand over to the other presenters again. Thank you, everybody.
I can only tell you, Cornelius knows what he's talking about, especially when it comes to these motivating tips. Cornelius is doing his PhD in collaboration with Daimler, so he works half of the time for Daimler actually, so he only has half of the time for the PhD. And he did, together with us, this really extensive literature review. So I would really take his tips as coming from the heart. He really knows how hard it can be. Of course, your literature review for your master thesis won't have this extent. So you won't run into all of these problems, but I think they are still valid tips to apply. What I would like to stress, any structure, any traceable criteria that you define is better than not defining them. It doesn't have to be perfect and like this, which got really published in a really high-ranking journal and so on. Of course, it's not expected for your bachelor or master thesis, but still, everything that is not just a random rapid review, but where you can say, hey, these were my search terms. I searched this and this and this on this and these engines, and these were the categories that I checked. Is much better than just saying, okay, here are my 15, 20 papers, whatever, and maybe even listed in this. Okay, paper X did that, paper Y that, and this. That's just as the main takeaways. Do categories, do criteria, whatever, track them, write down how you found your papers and how you filtered them. And very important, this is the main goal of your literature review, show such relations, dependencies, categories, not just list to show, hey, I read something. Show why it actually helped your research question, namely getting a state-of-the-art overview and showing that your contribution, your problem is novel. Yeah, this needs to be shown from the review. Okay? Questions on that part? No? Okay. Then, that would be the last part. I would say we take 5 minutes break, yeah, and then we're almost done. So, last step today, and also when you write a research paper, term paper, thesis, is writing the abstract. Why is that the last step? Anybody has an idea?
We should include results.
Yes, exactly. Because when you write the abstract, first of all, you need to write it, as you say, including results, and you need to really know what the paper is about. And you typically don't know everything it is about until the end. Yeah? So still, since we have to kind of emulate this today a little bit, we will still try to do it to whatever degree it's possible at this point for you. But of course, I first want to show you what a good abstract looks like, or like the components that make up a good abstract. But maybe we can also collect them collaboratively. What do you think makes a good abstract?
Summarization of the results.
Yes, very important, of course, yeah.
It's very informative compared to the amount of space that you use, so it should be
Yes,
quite short.
very condensed, yeah. Other really important components of an abstract, except for the results and that it's short and condensed? Yeah, something, yeah, could be the exact question, could be something similar, yeah. What else? You've all read abstracts, what?
It should give a high-level overview.
Of what?
Paper.
Okay, paper, okay, of the research. Other things you saw in abstracts?
Specifically what they have done.
Yeah, so methodology. Yeah, so like key points of the methodology, exactly. I think we more or less collected everything. There is some recipe for a good abstract. For example, John Swales called it the CARS model, so create a research space. What does he mean by that? Is, well, first of all, you establish a territory, saying, this is like what you said, or what you phrased as broadly saying what this research this paper is about, where it's located in the research space. Yeah? So you establish a territory in the broad research domain. And then, this is more related to your comment, or maybe your comment, I'm not quite sure. Then you really say, hey, what was my research question, what did I do? Yeah? So you occupy the niche. You tell the purpose of your paper. Yeah? Establish a niche and occupy it. And then, this was definitely your comment, you say what you did and how. Yeah? Methodology, key concepts, is relevant concepts of methodology, data sets, methods, of course, also then what already the result is, so what came out of it, and the contribution. And this is very important. Tell the reader already there why your results are relevant, are significant, are important, are interesting to read. Yeah? Don't bury it only in the conclusion. Burying is the wrong way, but don't put it only to the conclusion. Also put it to the abstract. Tell the reader, hey, why this is a cool paper to read. Because as we saw, most researchers will only read the abstract because they need to decide, whether to include your paper in their literature review and so on. So tell them why they should. Yeah? Right in the abstract. And of course, that's exactly what you said. It needs to be concise, otherwise it defeats the purpose. Okay, so specific example. Maybe we go through it one-on-one. What would you say is the territory? Like literally in the text, what would you say established the territory? It's not so hard.
The first sentence.
First sentence, okay. And then? What is the niche?
The second sentence.
Yeah, I would say also the third. Okay, I think it's kind of straightforward. Yeah, so territory, niche. What did we do? Why did we do it? How did we do it? And then see what the largest part is about. Hey, what came out of it? Yeah? So this whole territory, niche, what and why thing can be rather short. That's what I meant earlier when I said, if you have a well-defined plan, a well-defined problem, you're very clear about your problem and what you want to find out. It can be very short, very concise. That's a good sign. That's a quality signal. Yeah? The interesting thing is, for some studies, it's the how we did it portion of the abstract will be longer because there's part of the innovation there already, or at least part of the relevance. In this case, the result is all that, pretty much all that counts. Yeah? What did we find? What does it mean? And impact. So why is it interesting? Why is it relevant? Why is it significant? Put it there. Huh? This work facilitates understanding navigational click behavior and thus can contribute to so much more. Huh? Put it there, then people will know whether they should include your paper or not. Okay? As far as you can. And if you, of course, you haven't done experiments and results and so on yet, imagine all your experiments go perfectly. You have the dream results. Try to write an abstract for your project, or at least parts of it if you can. Huh? And then we will give some feedback on it. I actually give you some help here so you can check this out. This is a collaborative Google Docs, so you can also see what others write. Maybe if you use the Google Docs, of course, you can also copy it out.